We'll just start recording. Great. And yeah, welcome to everybody that's watching live as well. And we're just about to begin by introducing Jetsunma Tenzin Palmo to the community and to everybody who's listening. So Tenzin Palmo grew up in London and felt the vocation for Buddhism at an early age. She went to India in 1964 at the age of 20 and was one of the first Western women to be ordained as a Tibetan Buddhist nun. For several years, she lived in a Himalayan monastery and then moved to a small cave where she remained for 12 years in order to work at her spiritual practice. In 2000, she started to build a nunnery for Himalayan women in North India named Dongyal Gatsu Ling, the garden of the authentic lineage. Prior to the COVID lockdown, Tenzin Palmo spent 6 months of the year traveling the world to give talks on Buddhism. In 2008, she received the title Jetsunma, meaning Venerable Master, from His Holiness Gyalwang Drukpa in recognition of her achievements. She's the subject of Cave in the Snow by Vicky Mackenzie and author of Reflections on a Mountain Lake, 3 Teachings, and Into the Heart of Life. So a really, really warm welcome to you again, Jetsunma, and thank you so much for being here today to support our community and share your wisdom and compassion with all of us. So yeah, shall we begin by just getting straight into the questions? Yeah. Okay. So the first question is that I have read your book and your story is remarkable. Can you talk a little bit about how you kept going in the cave for so long? And what were the most difficult aspects of living alone at high altitude?
Well, I mean, honestly, the cave was, to my mind, a really very ideal place for practice because much of the year it was inaccessible on account of snow. So then one knew once the snowfall came that one would not be disturbed for at least another 6 months. So that gave the opportunity to really delve deep into one's practice, knowing that, that was going to be an undisturbed space of time. And Lahul Spiti, where I was, is a Buddhist region. It's a very ancient Buddhist region. In fact, they had Buddhism before Tibet did. And the people there, therefore one felt very safe. I mean, obviously for a woman to be alone in an isolated place and to feel totally safe is quite rare, especially maybe in India. So that was a great advantage of being there. And also Lahul is called the land of the Dakinis. And Dakinis are these kind of feminine spiritual entities whose main job is to remove obstacles and be of help to practitioners. So I always felt that their energy there, they're just, even just when I wanted to leave the monastery and go to a more remote place, that very evening, one elderly nun had suddenly, without my saying anything, remembered a cave, which, in all the 6 years I'd lived there, they always said there were no caves. Where there are caves, there's no water. Suddenly that time, she suddenly remembered there was a cave that had water. And in this way, one feels that always that there was this very positive energy in that region, which really quite extraordinary things happened, actually. I won't go on to it because we had 10 million questions. But it always was a very supportive energy. And one felt that beings around were rejoicing that someone was there doing practice. Yes.
That's wonderful. So were there any difficult aspects for you of living alone at high altitude, such as loneliness or?
No, loneliness and that side of it was no problem at all. I mean, I always thought if I had to go to prison, I would attack one of the guards so they'd put me in solitary confinement. I'm perfectly happy being alone. The only difficulty there was in the spring when the snow melted and then the cave became very wet. And then one had to take everything out and dry it and try to air the cave out till it became habitable again. And that was all. Otherwise, it was, you know, it was very small, but it was perfect for, you know, for being there.
Wonderful. So inspiring. Gosh.
I mean, that's why I didn't leave. I mean, I would sit there looking at the mountains and think, if I could live anywhere in the world, where would you want to be? And I couldn't think of anywhere I would rather be. I mean, it had all the conditions ready for practice. So that's why I stayed there until they threw me out because they said I had no visa.
By which time it was a little late.
Well, by that time, I felt it's time to go. I've been in India 24 years. I thought I need a break.
Gosh. So a time of deep contentment and nourishment, it sounds like.
Yeah, it was a wonderful place. I mean, I recommend the mountains for practice.
Wow. So someone else is asking, just to follow up on this time in your cave, that having spent 12 years practicing in the cave, do you think that one needs to spend a lot of time in retreat or in solitude to live a fulfilled spiritual life or even to attain enlightenment?
Well, I think a lot depends on the individual. Some people thrive in isolation, and some people do much better in a social environment, like a community, like a sangha, right? So different people are different. So that's the first thing. But I think that the opportunity to go deeper into one's consciousness, there's without any outer distractions, at least for some periods of time, is important. I mean, periods of retreat and then come out and deal with the rest of the world. I mean, I think that this is very, you know, all Buddhist countries emphasize periods of retreat, even if you're in retreat with others, but still they're keeping silence. There's not much interaction. Each one is focused on their own spiritual practice. And I think that that is important, as well as the qualities which we develop by being with others, which you don't develop so much by being by yourself. I mean, the paramita, like generosity and kindness and patience and so forth, you know, they are very easy when you're by yourself. But when you have to deal with everyone else, then that's when we really see whether our isolated practice has really transformed anything inside. So to my mind, it's like breathing in and breathing out. Or you could say it's like, you know, with a computer, you have to keep it recharged. So after a while, the battery goes flat, you need to recharge the energy again. But you don't spend your time just recharging the battery. You have to make use of the battery to activate your equipment. So likewise, you know, you go into isolation or, you know, a quiet, focused retreat, then you come out and deal with how things are with others and whether or not one's heart really has opened towards others and whether one really does have the ability to have that sense of presence and awareness during life. Or you can only practice when you're in retreat and fall apart the minute you go out, you know?
Yes. And this is common, actually, isn't it? I've noticed that, you know, with people who do sometimes have many years of retreat, that it's quite jarring sometimes to come back to the world. And it's almost like you have to develop another kind of practice if you haven't had that chance to integrate before.
Well, I think it's very important to integrate.
Yeah.
And to make two sides of the same hand, you know, you have to bring the two together.
Yes, yes. Speaking of challenges, somebody's asking about starting up your nuns monastery, Dongyal Gatsu Ling, and wondering what was the most challenging aspect of that for you?
Well, I mean, probably in some ways the most challenging aspect was that I had never really lived in a nunnery. And so I hadn't got a clue how you start nunneries. But also at that time, this was, you know, I was not a Lama. I was not a Tibetan. You can't go and give talks if no one asks you to talk, right? And so that was one challenge, was that, and if you don't, nobody knows you, how are you going to be invited to give teaching? And without giving talks and teaching, how can I tell them about the nuns? Because often people say, oh, well, for 20 years, I've been supporting monasteries. You're the first person to mention nuns. Mm. Because, of course, the lamas go abroad, they talk about their monasteries. They don't talk about the nunneries, if they had any. And so that in the beginning was, but it all came about. And of course, Vicky's book was very helpful, because that got translated into so many languages, including Oriental languages. And so that was very useful, very, very useful. Mm. Then the other thing was finding the kind of land we needed, because we needed land which had access to water, that you could link up to electricity, that had an access road, and that was somewhat near enough to our monastery, which we're affiliated with, Kampaga. But fortunately for us, the community in which our monastery lives owns some land, which is about 10 minutes from the monastery. And this is where we are now. So that land turned out, we have underground water, and electricity was easy. There was a access road, and it's not too hilly, because this is, you know, very hilly country. It's not too hilly, and actually all the land that we have, we can make use of. So that was also a very great blessing, because we also didn't have to worry about negotiating for price and things like this. Sokni Rinpoche, who was the president at that time of Tashijong, where the community is, he bargained down the lay people to half price. Mm. So that was very lucky too. Mm. And so in this way, we've been very, very blessed. I have always, when I was asked by the lamas to create this nunnery, because they said, we have nothing for the women, and I knew this was what I needed to do. At the same time, I had no idea how to start about it. It's very difficult just starting something from nothing, huh? And so I looked up and I saw this tanka, this scroll painting of Tara, of green Tara. And I just said, okay, lady, if you want it, you do it. You know, I put it all in your hands. If you want this nunnery, I'll be the front person, but you have to get it going behind the scenes. And she has. She's awfully good. She's very, very, you know, apart from her wisdom and her compassion, her fearless compassion, she's also very, very active. You know, and everything's come together. The people we need, the money we need, the land we need, the nuns we need, the teachers we need, everything just went click, 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 up to now.
Wow, absolutely amazing.
It is absolutely amazing, because I'm not at all an organizer. And yet everything has come together so beautifully. Wow. So as I say, I put it all in the hands of Tara.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's real renunciation too, as well as devotion.
Well, I mean, it happens. I think if you don't think you're doing it and you put it in the hands of a higher power, it just comes together. I mean, if the karma is there, obviously.
Yeah. Wonderful. Gosh, there's a lot in that for me to take away and ponder upon. Great. Thank you for sharing. We have some practice questions now. And the first one is about advice for dealing with the terminal illness of a loved one. So this person's saying that impermanence and death are part of the path, but we are human and it hurts to see a loved one suffer and not to be able to do much.
Yes, well, you know, I mean, honestly, whenever, and one hears this, especially at this time, because so many people have lost their loved ones, you know, during this whole COVID epidemic. But I think we really do have to accept that this is samsara, which by its very nature includes old age, sickness, and death. I mean, it just does. And that we are all the owners of our own karma. So we have to accept the fact that, you know, these things happen to us, however nice we are, however good we are, however whatever, you know, this happens to us, it happens to those we love, everywhere, everywhere. So at this time, I think it's helpful, if you can't help, you know, do what you can, obviously, to help physically. But the Tibetans have a practice called Tonglen, where you breathe in the suffering and you breathe out well-being. That can be very helpful. If you're sitting with someone who is suffering and you feel so helpless, then it can be very, very helpful, very healing to visualize bringing in the darkness and letting out the light. And even though it's not going to cure them, they often feel something, you know, you don't have to say, I'm going to do Tonglen for you. You just sit there quietly. And people feel that the change in the whole atmosphere when they come into the room. They feel that there's something very positive there, something calming and good that has taken place. If you don't want to do Tonglen, you can do metta. You know, I mean, just send them love if you're not taking in their suffering and the causes of the suffering, the karma behind it all. Even if you're not doing that, at least we can send out, you know, light and love and a kind of healing energy for them. So, I mean, you know, that we can just do. It doesn't, as I say, cure them or particularly relieve them of their physical pain, but it can help to relieve the mental suffering.
Beautiful. And I'm guessing that by doing those practices, one benefits oneself as well and invites that metta.
It's a very deep, Tonglen especially is very deep because, you know, it really hits at the ego. That is very sorry someone's suffering, but in their heart of hearts, it's glad it's not them. So when you have genuine Tonglen, you really would wish, just as a mother with a child, she would do anything to take on the suffering of that child. She would be happy to have the suffering of that child if that child could be released from their suffering. So that very genuine sense of interchange, to take in their darkness and suffering and to give out light, because that darkness hits our ego, and then the ego turns into our primordial nature, which is always light and love and compassion. So it releases that which is within us.
Beautiful. Thank you. That's wonderful. So the next person is asking for advice for lay women who found the path later in life and are too old for ordination, but want to focus seriously on developing their practice. What would you advise?
Well, you know, in Buddhist countries, and probably as in Catholic countries, older people, when they retire and their family is often left home, then they dedicate their time to spiritual practice. This is what they do. And so many take 8 precepts, and they wear, well, in the Tibetan tradition, of course, they would wear maroon colored clothing, you know, not robes, but their traditional dress, you know, chuba. They would usually wear maroon or brown just to remind themselves, right? Any appropriate Dharma colors. And then they give their time to practice, to meditation practice, attending teachings and retreats, helping out at their Dharma centers or their temples. You know, just as in the Catholics, you know, the older women help out in the church, you know, the same idea. Now is the time to dedicate to the next life, right? And so they get ready. So in the charitable organizations, they've got free time, they can volunteer. Many of our volunteers here, the English teachers and our project managers, etc., were Western women who had now retired from their professional life. And so they came here to volunteer and help out, you know, and go to the pujas, do retreats and so forth. You know, that kind of energy you've got freed up now. You don't have to take care of your children anymore. And so then they can think about the inevitability of death and how we must make use of our precious human life. Now we have it. We're not dead yet, but it's coming. So let's make use, you know, simplify our lives. That's also very important. Gradually let go of our attachments. Use our daily life to practice the paramitas, especially ethics, generosity, patience, service. I mean, your life becomes incredibly rich. And many of these ladies who came to work with us and have been coming for years and years have said that, you know, they felt when they came that their life was just drawing to an end, but now it's never been as active and as meaningful as it is now. You know, they are just filled with joy to be able to give themselves to practice and to service.
Yeah. That's so wonderful. I think sometimes we think of practice as meditation practice, but it always should really go hand in hand with the service. And that's what really empowers the practice, isn't it?
There's so many things to practice. I mean, meditation is only one.
Yeah. Great. So there's a wonderful invitation for everybody to go over to India and to help and to serve.
Help you with your starting your nunnery, you know, and your Dharma center. You need help.
Yeah, yeah.
They don't come to India. They can stay right where they are and help and integrate the Dharma with their daily lives.
Yeah, yeah. That's really what I hope to offer, actually, by establishing something which will be a lot more modest in size and in scope than your place, Jetsunma. But certainly, I mean, that's one of my key wishes, you know, is to find a place that's a middle ground whereby we can integrate the service and the meditation, you know, in our daily life. Yeah, because it's all very well going to retreat centers, but what do you do afterwards?
Yeah. It will happen, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have the vision, if you have the pure vision, then it will unfold. So don't worry, it will happen.
I think those words bring a lot of joy to everybody, certainly to me, and I can see some of our supporters smiling at that. That's great. Okay, so the next one is coming into some of the current crises that we're experiencing globally. So this person's asking that in the wake of the COP26, how do you envisage humanity creating enough metta, wisdom, and activism to save the planet? Difficult one.
You know, human beings especially, leave the animals out. Human beings are very heavily engulfed in the three poisons. You know, and these three poisons, especially our greed and our aggression, motivated by our total ignorance of how things really are, is poisoning and destroying our planet. I mean, when you get down to it, it's the reason why we are destroying our planet? It's because of our unmitigated greed and the aggression which comes along with that, all fueled by the idea that we can make samsara into nirvana just by being comfortable and giving into as many pleasures as possible, that will bring infinite happiness. And of course, you know, as we know it, it's not going to work. However, nowadays, at least, there is more awareness that there's a problem. There's not so much denial anymore. And, you know, young people in particular are very concerned about the future of the planet. And they really want to do something. whether or not as they grow older, then they'll get married and then they'll be concerned more about, how putting kids in school and keeping their job and paying their mortgage and forgetting about the planet again. I don't know, you can't tell. But at the moment, at least, the young people care. And if anyone can save the planet, it has to be them, because they're the future. I don't know that they will, because they still are motivated with their greed and aggression and their ignorance, because, we're unenlightened human beings, and here we are. But perhaps with right leadership, good leadership, wise, compassionate leadership, something could change. I don't know that it will. It never has up to yet. But we have never been in such a crisis as we are now. So we hope that some of these Buddhas and Bodhisattvas will take rebirth and guide us, because we definitely need good leadership. And at the moment, the planet lacks that.
Yeah. Thank you. That's quite an optimistic message, actually, and realistic at the same time.
We can only hope,
Yeah.
Never give up.
Yeah.
As His Holiness says, never give up. And fair enough, we'll keep hoping.
Fantastic.
Because innately we do have wisdom. Innately we do have compassion. We just have to recognize and bring it to the fore.
And sometimes suffering can help with that, can't it? But
there's all these wonderful documentaries on the problem now, on the planet, what's happening to the beings on the planet. And more people are becoming conscious. And so let's hope, yes, through suffering comes understanding.
Yeah.
Just today, thinking about that, there's this Zoom Dharma meeting every week that a friend of mine, Aileen, does from Australia. And she showed this clip of this boy. He's probably about 10 now. And he suffers from some kind of genetic thing where he can't get his red corpuscles cannot work. And so every month he has to have all his blood taken out and new blood put in. And they said to him, a lovely boy, and they said to him, do you wish, then maybe they're going to find some genetic way to stop that, so that after this, future children will not suffer from this particular rare disease. And would you have liked that could have happened to you? And he said, no. He said, because of what I've had to go through and from what I have experienced, I am who I am now. I have compassion, I have understanding, I have patience. I have all these qualities that if I hadn't had the sickness, I would never have been able to develop. So I'm grateful for my sickness. He's 10 years old.
It's just amazing. It brings tears to my eyes. That's amazing.
Yeah.
He understands what's really important in life.
Yeah. As you said, suffering, that's how we grow.
So beautiful. Wow. Okay, so carrying on with suffering related to this world, someone else is asking, how do we practice compassion towards authoritarian regimes that create so much suffering? For example, the regimes in Myanmar and Syria.
Yes, well, of course, compassion doesn't mean that we condone the evil actions of others. That is not, it doesn't say it's okay. Of course, it's not okay. But we can reflect, for example, on the karma that these regimes are creating for themselves. I mean, both individually and in general. When these people do these things, next lifetime, if not in this lifetime, they're going to, reap the rewards of that one. And the sad state of mind that these people are in, that allows them to, to allow these things to happen. I mean, would we want their mind?
Yeah.
Imagine living in a mind that thinks like that and thinks that what they are doing is right and good. And, and the brainwashing of the poor youth in the military, I mean, this is really one of the most awful things. And the degree of delusion in these power crazy leaders, really compassion. Really, really, how sad, I mean, really and truly, imagine living like that in that kind of mind. So therefore we have compassion both for the victims, of course, but also for the perpetrators. Because, it's a very, very sad situation that they are in, even if they think they are victorious. In the end, they are the very, very deep losers. Lifetime after lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you think, Jetsunma, just to add on a little bit to that, that sometimes this compassion towards such regimes does include trying to stop them if you're in a position to be involved?
Of course. I mean, back to Tara, she represents fearless compassion. So she's very strong. She'd go out there and do things. Of course, compassion doesn't just mean that we are complicit in what they are doing. But the reason, I mean, like Thich Nhat Hanh is a very good example, I think, of this. When there was all these horrible things happening in Vietnam, the war, then he didn't take sides. And he tried on both sides to, bring about reconciliation and to help with the people, the ordinary people in the villages and so forth, his team. That's why they were so unpopular with both sides, because neither side could believe that they actually were neutral and just trying to help the people who were squashed in the middle of, both the American side and the Viet Cong. And that's the point, is that they were trying to help. And they had compassion both for the Viet Cong and from the American side, but they weren't motivated by anger, and they weren't motivated by aggression. They were motivated by deep compassion for everybody's delusion and trying to help. They were always trying to help. They would go into villages and do what they could to help the people there. It's not that they were just sitting in their kutirs sending out compassion. They were very active, but it was fueled by their wisdom and compassion and not by anger and aggression and the desire to harm.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Mm.
Thank you.
Yeah,
very
that makes him so great,
Yeah.
Because he could see that.
Right. It's quite a high practice, isn't it? Because for most people, I mean, there's bound to be at times the anger.
If I'm right and you're wrong,
yeah,
then there's always going to be clashes. But if you can see both sides and try to bring them together and to help, then, maybe eventually something resolves.
Yeah, it involves dialogue and listening also.
That's the hardest thing for people to do, because I'm right, you're wrong.
Right. And we always think we're right.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Thank you. So the next couple of questions are a little bit more around the practice. And someone's asking that they're in the process of uncovering emotions conditioned from childhood that they thought they dealt with, but realized they were just putting a band-aid on. This person says, I can function, but these suppressed emotions stop me from being fully alive. Please, can you advise the best way to go through this process?
Yes, well, I mean, first of all, we have to recognize that Buddhism is not psychiatry, and so sometimes people do need to see psychotherapists as well as meditate. Yeah. But we should also remember that all our thoughts, including our memories and our emotions, and our feelings they're empty by nature. You know, they are like a bubble which is very colorful and bright, but you prick the bottle and it's empty, you know. And the problem is that we hold on and we believe, back to believing in our thoughts, believing in our memories, believing in our emotions, as if it's something solid and enduring, you know. So this is one problem, but they're not solid, enduring entities. They're just thoughts. They're just replays of old emotional memories that have not been digested properly. That's the problem, you know. So, to my mind, first step is we must recognize these emotions. It's not that we're suppressing them or denying them, right? First, we have to recognize these emotions, right? Which is what she's doing at this time, right? She's recognizing these emotions, then accept them. Accept them without denying them or suppressing them, right? Try to make friends, right? Take an emotion and ask it, what do you want? Mm-hmm. You know, how are you feeling? Listen to it without any avoidance and without judgment. You know, we don't listen. We try to suppress or get rid of. We reject. But instead, we should make friends and say, okay, what's your problem? Allow the emotion to speak to you and listen to it. You know, I mean, then embrace it with compassion because it's hurting, you know. And so we need to befriend our painful feelings in order that they can heal. You know, just denying them or judging them doesn't help. Gradually they will soften and gradually transform, you know, but we have to, like, you know, give them a hug and say, I'm so sorry you're in hurting. What's your problem? What do you want to tell me? And listen. And then slowly, gradually, they will come up and you can face them as a friend instead of an enemy and heal them.
Beautiful.
Because they're not part of our intrinsic nature. Our intrinsic nature is completely beautiful. We all have Buddha nature. We all are intrinsically good. We all have intrinsic wisdom and compassion and love. This is our true nature. Our true nature, our true mind is luminously beautiful and knowing. That's the essential quality, is that it knows, right? So all this other stuff are like the black clouds, but they're not the sky. So we shouldn't, you know, we should be kind and you know, show them, you know, respect almost, you know, let it come up, listen to it, say, I understand you're suffering. It's okay now. Mm-hmm. You know, we can be friends.
Thank you. Yeah, that word respect came to mind when you were speaking about engaging with these emotions and actually asking them what they want, because so much of the time we feel we know what they should want, or we know what emotions should be there or shouldn't be there.
Yes, but you know, all this stuff needs to come up. It's like, you know, we've been pushing it down and then it gets like, you know, compost. It just, you know, sort of starts to smell if it don't give it some air. And then compost can be very useful for growing beautiful vegetables.
Yes. Yeah.
If it doesn't go, you know, but it needs to be aerated.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. Thank you. That's so beautiful. And I'm sure that is helpful for everybody, because we all have, you know, suppressed emotions to some extent, and emotions we prefer.
Into the light.
Yeah.
Nice, friendly light, you know.
Great. Okay, so the next person is asking, what is the Tibetan equivalent of jhana, and do you teach jhana? Are such profound states of samadhi essential for profound insights into reality?
Well, in general, the Tibetans do not stress jhanas because they say they take too much time and they're not necessary. The word for jhana is samten in Tibetan. Our disciplinarian, non-disciplinarian this year, her name is Samten. It's a quite common name. Mm-hmm. So the Tibetans sometimes aim for like something like the first jhana, you know, or at least a stable concentration, but it's a very relaxed concentration, you know, with the emphasis on the awareness rather than the object of the awareness. For example, if you're focusing on the breath, then the attention is more on the attention, the awareness, rather than the breath. So if you're focusing on the breath, but you're more aware of being aware, you know, the mindfulness, which is looking at the breath, then even if there's a sound that comes in, then and it's a repeated sound like a dog barking or something, it doesn't disturb the meditation because then the attention goes to the dog barking, and that it's just the awareness which is the important thing. So also awareness of the thoughts, which is the main Tibetan practice to, after you've calmed the mind by, you know, the breath, which is the easiest, of course, then to bring that attention to the thoughts themselves. And recognize that thoughts themselves are just, you know, like a river flowing. They're not, you know, something real and static. So again, you know, the idea is to understand the mind. So therefore we look at the mind to see what is the thought, where does it come from, where does it go to, who is thinking, what is thinking? You know, and to that it becomes more the vipassana. The vipassana is the questioning the mind. Where is the mind? What is a thought? What is a feeling? What is a thought? Here we are, we swim in the ocean of thoughts, but like a fish, we don't know, doesn't know water. So we don't know what is a thought, but we know we believe our thoughts, right? Which is one of our more foolish habits. So then, you know, observe the mind and see that the thoughts themselves are empty and they're not me, they're not mine, right? This is a very basic standard. So just calming the mind a bit, but the thoughts themselves are not the problem. You know, in the Mahamudra Dzogchen, we're not trying to get rid of thoughts. What we're trying to do is understand thoughts and go back into a deeper level, because even mindfulness is dualistic, right? There's someone mindful and the object of mindfulness. So it's still not ultimate reality, but it comes as a bridge to a deeper level of primordial awareness, which is non-dual, right? Where there is no sense of, subject and object, really, where it interconnects us with all beings instead of separates us. So they are much more interested in that, in investigating the consciousness and realizing the primordial awareness of the nature of the mind. So therefore, they feel that the jhanic, sometimes the Gelugpas go into it more in the more traditional Mahayana way, but in Dzogchen and Mahamudra, the interest is always on this open awareness.
Okay, so from that perspective, I guess we wouldn't then be saying that states of jhana are essential for profound insights into reality, not necessarily. No. Or would it depend on the person or the inclination to say?
Well, I mean, some people are very good at it and they can go, I mean, like, some people like Dipankara Sayale, she from very early was, could go into states of jhana. She just had obviously practiced this very much in her past life. And so in this lifetime, it was very easy for her. And so with that as a wonderful base, you can go on into deep insight because your mind is so well trained. Shamatha is important, And one Lama, very high Lama, said to me that if you have good shamatha, then the rest of the Dharma is in the palm of your hands. Because if with a well-trained mind, with a mind which is very workable and flexible, wherever you put your attention, you become one with what you're attending to instead of being distracted. So yes, they do shamatha, but not to the sense of going through all 8 jhanas.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody who does that. Okay.
That's really interesting. Even in the Theravada tradition, I think very few people go through all those jhanas.
Yeah. Parts.
Perhaps, yes, at the Park monasteries, they do develop jhana. Great. So carrying on then on the theme of meditation, someone's saying that I've been practicing regularly with body sweeping meditation for more than a year now. Every time I move my attention to my heart area, I feel my heart is sunk, scared and anxious. How shall I look at this properly? I usually move on, thinking that one day this fearful feeling will disappear.
Well, so I would say again, look at that fear. Do not fear the fear, right? I mean, this is the whole point. Treat it like a friend. Hello, fear. What are you afraid of? You know, I mean, that's the point, because if we avoid fear or suppress it and feel afraid of it, then it will never resolve. But if we treat it as a friend with metta, you know, bring metta to it and say, okay, what's your problem? Tell me about it. Listen. Just stay quietly, watch the fear coming up with kind inner eyes, you know, just don't try to suppress it or get rid of it or think it's bad, because it's telling us something, right? I mean, all these emotions are telling us things. Fear cannot harm us. That's the point. You know, it's not going to hurt us. It's trying to tell us something. We have to listen with kind heart, loving heart, like a child that's afraid. You listen. What's your problem? Why are you afraid? You know? I mean, it might be some inner trauma from the early childhood, perhaps, that they are suppressing. That sometimes happens, something which was long ago, which was then battened down. And now, because we are meditating, we are able to, you know, allow things which were hidden to come back up. So we shouldn't push it down again. We should allow it to come up into the light, because it's been in the dark for too long, you know? So now it's through this meditation, it's asking to be heard. It's asking to, you know, be released. So therefore, give it permission. Give it permission to speak. Sit there with loving compassion in your heart, right? And look, just look at this feeling of fear and embrace it. Really. You know, sometimes I'd say, like, we're in an ocean. And normally we live on the surface, on the waves, you know, waves go up, waves go down, but that's where we are. Through meditation, we go deeper below the ocean, down, 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 down. And you know, people hoping to meet, you know, playful dolphins and beautiful golden fish. And we might, you know, there might be bliss, there might be calm, there might be all sorts of nice things, but there are also sharks. There are also killer whales. There are all sorts of monsters of the deep down there. And we're going to meet those too. And so meet them with love. I'm thinking of sharks. There's this wonderful video clip of this woman who goes to the sharks, and she puts her hand, her whole arm in their mouths to pull out what you call fish hooks, which they have swallowed from the, you know, the fisher people. And they're caught in their gut and they can't get them out themselves. So she goes in, she puts her hand, all these teeth, she puts her hand inside and she helps to pull out. And there are all these sharks around her waiting for her to come and help them.
Oh.
It's just extraordinary. You should look up that video. It's just amazing. She just goes in and she helps them, and they know she's going to help them. So they never attack her. They're just waiting patiently for her to do their next. So this is like with our fears, you know, if we are brave and we know we want to help you, your fears will gather around you and bless you for being there to finally release them from their pain.
Mm. That's so wonderful. That's a real example, living example of powerful loving kindness, isn't it? And how that protects us from harm.
Amazing.
Mm.
And true, because there it is. You can see him. She's doing exactly that.
Okay, I think I know what everyone here will be doing after this session, Googling it.
Yeah, look for it. It's just extraordinary. The power of love and compassion. Yeah.
Beautiful. And that people, even animals, pick up on that. Something energetic.
Animals pick up on it quicker than humans, I think.
Yeah. That can be true. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great. So the next one is about different meditation subjects. So someone's asking, how do people's characters influence their choice of meditation subject?
I mean, obviously, you know, there are some people who favor analytical type of meditations, and others who like to sit with no thought. Some people who like to practice like kind of shamatha or jhanas and things like this. People who enjoy meditations for cultivating positive emotions like love and compassion, you know, metta practices. Some people just only do metta practices, you know, because they need to open up their heart. So some people enjoy visualizations. In the Tibetan tradition, they do a lot of visualizing. And some people don't. You know, I mean, not everybody can visualize or wants to visualize. You know, some people love it and some people don't love it. Some people favor close moment-to-moment attention, and others like to rest in open, spacious awareness, right? In the Tibetan tradition, which took everything which was extant in India up to the 12th century in Buddhist circles, there are myriads of different approaches, so many different kinds of meditations. And it's really a bit like a Dharma supermarket. You know, you go in there and there's so much on display and you choose what you want. And so many people combine various techniques together to make something which is fulfilling intellectually and emotionally and on all levels. And so, you know, different people, there's something for everybody, really. You know, I mean, I think that's fantastic. And it brings together this balance of the head and the heart, which is what we need. So, I mean, I think that it's wonderful that there are so many different approaches and all of them work.
Mm.
But each one has its own power, its own influence. So yeah, it's like that. Different people, different things, you know. Some people like blue, some people like red, right? Some people like pizza, some people like spaghetti, you know. I mean, you can't say what people are going to like. And you can mix them all together. Probably get indigestion, but...
Yeah, maybe not all at the same time.
No, but different people are attracted to different approaches, and different approaches are useful for different kinds of people.
Mm. Mm. So could we roughly say, just picking up on a few of your comments there, that it's maybe quite a good thing to work to our strengths and to follow our inclinations in terms of what interests us?
To a certain extent, but if, for example, we have a very analytical mind, but not much empathy, you know, kind of cold heart, but very bright here, it's good to work on the empathy. If we are very sentimental and empathetic, but not much clear thinking, then maybe it's good to study a bit more and get more So it's good to balance, as I say, so yes, we can practice something which we feel comfortable with, but sometimes it's also good to do things which stretch us and create an inner balance, because sometimes you see it also with people who do like a lot of Vipassana. If they're that kind of person, then sometimes it's hard for them to interrelate with other people. They should do more metta also, to open up the heart as well as hone their ability to be mindful.
Great. Yeah, lovely.
Well, the Buddha taught everything. He was really a genius.
Yeah. And I found in my practice that sometimes emphasizing different practices at different times in my life, depending on maybe the challenges that I'm facing or the particular stage that I'm in, whether it's a retreat condition or more of a daily life condition, can be really helpful. And I think just this emphasis on loving kindness can be really helpful for everybody, because as you were saying, even with open awareness or with Vipassana practice, it's so important to meet things with kindness.
Absolutely. That's why I like Ajahn Brahm's kindfulness.
Yeah.
I think that's it, We have to be kindful.
Yes, it's quite a very clever little innovative word.
You wonder why I've never thought of it before.
Yeah.
Because it is so apt, to open the heart as well as to, cultivate our presence. Yes.
Wonderful. So the next question is that as a grandma and activist, and that's not me, I'm not a grandma, with the job, how can I remain still and experience deep, blissful meditation? As a normal, stressed out person, all I can manage is to just sit and enjoy a bit of quiet time. Well, my first thought when I read that was that mindfulness is not just about being blissed out, right? And to hope it will be that every time we sit to meditate, we will be in a state of bliss is really just greed and attachment, right? And very unrealistic. What kind of meditation is that? So, of course, meditation should calm the mind, it should tame the mind. As the Buddha said, a well-tamed mind brings happiness. And so, yes, we should make it calm and workable, but this is in order to gain insight into what is the mind. It's not just about sitting there blissing out. So what is a thought? And so, we have to really try to stay observing the thought with a relaxed mind. That's fine. She can do that, stay with a focused mind. But meditation is not really intended simply to lower our stress levels. It's meant to liberate us from samsara. So, I would say to her, all right, maybe not too long sessions. Maybe that becomes more stressful if you're not used to it. So sit for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, observe the breath, just let everything go. And just be present with what's happening in the moment. And that's enough. She can do that. That will release her stress levels. And recognizing everything that comes in the mind is just a play of the mind. It's not real. And just because we think it isn't necessarily true. Yeah. And it sounds also as though part of that approach would be lowering one's expectations, because sometimes we take these expectations into the practice with us, and that just follows the same sort of conditioning that we. Yeah. It's still grasping. Just don't even think of a goal. Just think how lovely it is just to sit and you have nothing to do but to breathe and know you're breathing. How wonderful. And I think that in all Buddhist schools, of course, meditation on the breath is always there.
And it's just so practical, because even during the day, if we're feeling stressed or worried, we can just bring the attention back to the breathing. Nobody knows that you're meditating, but in those even 1-2 minutes, you can just bring ourselves back into the body, bring ourselves back and unite with the breath. And, you know, that automatically centers us again, you know? So then, you know, she can do that. Even in the middle of her activism, if she's aware of what she's doing while she's doing it, that's a practice.
And that bringing ourselves back is almost like putting the brakes on sometimes, isn't it? When we're sort of speeding along, following our conditioned ways.
Well, if we know that's what we're doing, that's okay. You know, I mean, the problem is that we get lost. And so that's why again, the breath is so useful, because we're always breathing. It's just that we don't remember that.
Great. So this is so wonderful, very rich in terms of practice. And now we're going a little bit more into Buddhist doctrine, which also, of course, is important to have a clear understanding of the path. So this person is asking if you could please explain or give an understanding of rebirth. And I think by that they're talking a little bit about the mechanism of rebirth, sort of how it happens as well.
Okay, so I mean, this of course is a huge subject. I'm just making it small. So we are comprised of a physical body, including the brain, and consciousness, right? At the time of death, the body, along with the brain, drops away, but the consciousness, including our karmic imprints and our habitual tendencies, they carry on. So it's like in the Tibetan tradition, they believe there's a 49-day intermission called the Bardo. And during that time, the consciousness needs to find another vehicle. So they say it's like leaving a guest house or a hotel. You leave that behind, but you have to find now another hotel to go and stay in. But you don't own the hotel. You're just staying there for the time being. And then you leave that behind and you go and find another hotel, right? So this is the idea that we are not the body. The body is very useful and we can make use of it for our practice and for benefiting all beings, but we are not the body. So the body drops away, but the consciousness continues. So depending on our prior actions in former lives, we are propelled towards a suitable rebirth, right? In any of the various realms, either material realms or immaterial realms. And so the human realm is only one option. We have many options of where the consciousness is likely to go. I mean, I think it's interesting that at least in the Tibetan teachings, when if you're going to take a human birth or even an animal birth, you the karma will take you to your future parents, and you see the mother and father copulating. They're in sexual union. If you're going to be a girl, you're attracted to the father and you don't want the mother, you try to get in between to go to the father. If you're going to be a boy, you're attracted to the mother and you try to push the father away. So it's very Freudian. And then you will take rebirth by getting in between these two couples. Then, so how do you get reborn is that there is the sperm and the ovum, but it needs the consciousness to create the child. So when the three come together, then things happen, right? So we carry with us in this consciousness, the seeds of our intentional actions of body, speech, and mind, right? And or from our former lives, and especially from this one. And this influences our next rebirth. This is the idea. So what we experience now, right now, in this life, is contingent on the past, right? But how we respond is up to us. Whether we respond skillfully or unskillfully, whether we respond with negative roots like greed and anger and desire and delusion, pride, and all these negative feelings, anger, hatred, jealousy, or with positive thoughts of kindness, love, patience, and so forth, right? So what is happening to us is contingent on the past, but how we respond in the moment is up to us. We have a choice. That is not contingent on the past. That is up to us right now. And then that plants seeds for the future. So every moment we are eating up the past in the present moment and creating our future, depending on how in this moment we are responding, whether skillfully or unskillfully. So we are trapped in this endless cycle, right? Until we gain the realization that there is no one to be trapped. Once we have realized that, when the ego dissolves, we wake up to our true Buddha nature or nirvana. And then what we do with that depends on our prior aspirations. Mm. So, you know, on the one hand, yes, there is a kind of, you know, things don't just happen out of nowhere. We ourselves have created the causes. And now we have planted the seeds. If you plant a Brussels sprout seed, you'll get a Brussels sprout. If you plant a poison seed, you'll get a poison plant. I mean, it depends what kind of plant you know, you can't get a good plant out of a poison seed, and you won't get a poison plant out of a good seed. So, but then we have the choice of how we will deal with that. Like that boy, right? With that terrible sickness. And although that must have been because of some causes from the past, he has taken that and he has used it to grow inwardly and spiritually. He did not become fearful. He did not become angry. He did not become full of self-pity, which he could have done. That would be perfectly understandable, but he did not. He took that same result and transformed it in that time to become something which was very beneficial and helpful. So that we have a choice, that we have the choice. And then that creates future results. We're moment to moment planting more seeds, and that we will reap in this lifetime or in future lifetimes. But it's all kept together by our belief in someone who is doing it. Can you wait 1 second?
Of course.
One Burmese master said, it was like a mala. You pull one bead and all the other beads come with it. And it just goes round and round and round and round and round endlessly. Why? Because of the thread. And the thread is the belief in a person, an ego that is performing and reaping the results. If we cut the thread, then even one bead goes, the rest of the beads will never follow. So that's the point. We are held here by our ignorance. Cut that, and then, you know, that's karma comes to an end. But as long as we think we did it and there was somebody that was doing it behind it all, then it just keeps going round and round and round on the wheel.
It's the delusion. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what meditation is for. It's for helping us to recognize that since the very beginning, we have got it all wrong. We just don't see things how they really are. Either our ego mania to create again and again and again, or, you know, our outer world, which is not also how we think it is, and our relationship between the two. So that's why meditation, though it can be very blissful, it is not intended just to make us blissful. It's intended for us to gain real understanding of the way things really are, to gain genuine insight into what's going on inside.
Thank you so much. That was really clear and yeah, very helpful, I think, for me also, just very clear. Yeah. The problem is, of course, to realize it.
Well, this is it. But at least if we have an idea that there is something which we need to realize, you know, I mean, as the Buddha said, you know, drop by drop, the jar is filled. And that's what I feel. We hear this again, and slowly drop by drop by drop. He didn't say you turn on the tap and there's a great big gush. You know, it's just drip by drip.
Yes. Thank you for giving us so many drips today. This is certainly, we're coming to fill our tanks. Great. Okay, so there's just a few more questions. I don't know, how are you doing energy-wise, Jetsunma?
Oh, it's okay. Go.
Okay, lovely. So the next question is, please, can you tell me if Mara ever visited the Buddha after his enlightenment?
Yes, of course. Again. I mean, the Buddha and Mara were old acquaintances, really. And Mara kept popping up all over the place. And one of the times when he did come is documented in the Mahaparinirvana Sutta, which is very important because just 3 months before the Buddha went into Mahaparinirvana, Mara came and he said, this is in Pali Canon, it's very important. He said, do you remember, oh Bhagavan, well, just after you were enlightened, I came to you and said, okay, you've gotten everything you wanted. Now you can go into nirvana. Bye. And you said, oh no, Mara, I cannot leave until the fourfold Sangha is firmly established, right? Straight after his enlightenment, he said, I am here to create the fourfold Sangha. Fourfold Sangha is bhikkhus, bhikkhuni, lay, upasaka, upasika. In fact, all the followers of the Buddha, lay and monastic. So there's no way that he could later have been so opposed to having bhikkhunis and be shocked at the idea, because that was part of his plan right from the start. I mean, he might have been a bit dismayed. It was early years that Mahapajapati and all her court ladies wanted to become nuns when there were no nunneries, there were no monasteries, that everybody was living in the forest, begging for alms. I mean, they were very delicate court ladies. They weren't just peasant women. And he must have thought, oh God, how am I going to protect them and take care of them? You know, and Pajapati was not so young. And many of them might have been quite old. So he might have been a bit dismayed about how he was going to take care of them. But there's no way he could have said that they were going to be, you know, a future destruction for the Dharma. When right from the start, he said that's very important, like a table with four legs, right? Stable. And so then Mara, at the time when 3 months before the Buddha was dying, says, okay, now your fourfold Sangha is firmly established, it's flourishing. Everybody in that fourfold Sangha, not just the monks, everybody in that fourfold Sangha is studying and practicing and propagating the Dharma. So you can go now. And then the Buddha says, yes, don't be in a hurry, I'm leaving. But the point was that it was very obvious that the fourfold Sangha was central to the Buddha's vision. It was never all just about monks. Of course, everything was written down, was memorized and written by monks, but it's clear through all that nonetheless, it's so obvious that, and of course with the Therigatha, you can see how the Buddha really cherished his nuns and encouraged them and looked after them and loved them. He didn't see them as a problem at all. So Mara, yes, Mara, anyway, Mara was always around. I mean, that's the point. And the thing with Mara is to recognize him, right? And always the theme is, I know you, Mara. And then he can't do anything, right? He's completely disempowered. As long as we recognize, then that's it. It's like anger. If we feel anger coming up and we recognize this is anger, we already got the power in our hands. If we don't recognize the anger, then we're swept along.
Great. Yes, I'm really glad we got the fourfold Sangha or the fourfold assembly in there today. That's wonderful.
Well, it's time,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
this was the Buddha's intention. That's the point. I mean, it was so clearly the Buddha's intention, and it makes so much sense because everything is balanced.
Mm.
You know, monastics, laity of both genders.
Mm.
The
How
stable
can there be exclusion? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very interesting, the opposition.
Mm.
Not in Mahayana countries. You see, if you go to Vietnam or Korea or China or Taiwan, there the name for a monk and a nun is the same. In Chinese, it's sifu. In Korean, it's sunim. But monks or nuns, they're called the same, sunim, sifus. And the lay people treat them exactly the same. In fact, in China, many of the monks would prostrate to me. And I would say, no, a monk is not supposed to prostrate to a nun. And they said, but you're my senior. And it's the same, monks or nuns.
Great.
And they just didn't see any difference. They were brothers and sisters all together. So this is what the Buddha had in mind, I'm quite sure. How it should be. And how it will be. We just have to keep going.
Yes, yes, yes. Not to get disheartened along the way.
No, it will happen. Because it's the truth.
Yeah, yeah.
And inner truth will win in the end.
Wonderful. Okay, now the next one is from a pet owner, and she's asking, in Buddhism, the animal realm is considered a lower realm. As a pet owner whose dog is loved, spoilt, and looks quite happy, can you give me some clarity on the suffering of animals?
So, right. So if we just consider the trillions of animals, including birds, fish and beings living in the waters and insects and everything, compared with a few pampered pets. Come on, you know, and I mean, really and truly, most animals in the animal kingdom spend most of their time looking for food or avoiding becoming the food of others. You know, mostly they live in fear. You watch birds when they're eating, even in a completely docile, they're always looking around, waiting, you know, for something to get them. And, you know, so if you think of also all the millions of animals who are raised for human consumption, you know, and all the animals, all the millions of animals who are used for medical experiments, all the pain and the frustration and suffering of all these animals. I mean, come on, you know, a few pampered poodles. What is that compared with all these zillions of animals out there who are living very, very difficult lives? So, I mean, many animals are very intelligent, and we all have Buddha nature. And some of them are very kind. We're not saying that, but still, nonetheless, they do not have that spiritual impulse, it seems, really, that to raise themselves beyond their habitual instincts. We all are creatures of our instincts, but animals especially so. It's very hard for them to go beyond that. But on the other hand, you know, with human beings, if all you want is, you know, a comfortable life and some, you know, nice sex and good food and no worries and people loving you, then pray very, very hard to come back as a pet poodle next life.
Yeah. Yeah. And sadly we
But
see
would you want to? That's the question. Would you really want to? Even a human life with all its worries and all its problems and all its challenges, most people wouldn't want to be, you know, their pet. And most animals really have a very hard life.
Yeah, it's hard enough as a human.
But look what humans do to animals.
Yeah. Okay. So none of us want to be reborn in the animal realm, I hope. And
it's
yet
very hard to
beings,
get out of it, sister.
right.
It's very hard to get out of it, to make the karma to go above it. Because, I mean, I think sometimes that animals who are very, very close to their owners, you know, these pamper poodles, may have the opportunity to come into a human life next time, because they are stretching themselves above themselves to, you know, get into real communication with their owners. If they're not just thinking about food. I mean, some animals are very, you can feel they are very intelligent and they have, you know, really genuine goodness in them. And it may be that that will be their exit from the animal realm into a human realm. Right. Who knows? But it's very hard once you're gone down to go back up again, which is why we have to make the best use we can of this human life while we've got it and not waste it. Not live on the level of just animal, you know, satisfaction.
Okay, we've come to the very last question, although there were a few more that were sent in afterwards, but unfortunately we did receive them a little bit too late. So maybe we'll have to ask Venerable to come back again sometime. But the last question for today is, what do you think is the best way to translate samadhi, that's, well, I'll let you say what that means, into English, and why?
Well, I mean, this is a difficult question. I'm not a translator. And so I really don't know. So, I mean, normally the usual translation would be concentration. And obviously we can be concentrated, like on a task we're doing, or on a book, or even on a movie, but we are not in samadhi, right? So obviously it's not just concentration as we normally understand it. And we probably don't really even have an equivalent in English. This is the point. Contemplative meditation, meditative stability, meditative absorption, maybe that's more jhana. Usually I would just say samadhi, because there are many words which do not have a direct translation into English. We just don't have a word for it. And they're best left in the original language. We say samsara, nirvana, dharma, karma. English is a very flexible language. It absorbs everything from everywhere. If you look at the derivation of words in the Oxford English Dictionary, it's fascinating, because almost no words are from the Anglo-Saxon. They're all from everywhere else. I mean, including, you know, Chinese, Hindi, Arabic, as well as Greek and Latin and everything. And so English is very adaptive. And there are certain words which, if you try to think of a neologism for that word, it's more awkward than the original, once you understand what the original means. And then it doesn't get a distortion also, because once somebody explains to you what samadhi is, then you know what samadhi is, and it doesn't, you're not complicated by all the derivations of the English word, you know, because all our words come with a background. right? And I mean, it's not just this word and then they all come together. I mean, they're like this. So it's very hard often to get, this has this meaning in the original. And the English word has a completely different cultural context. And so therefore, you know, we can be beguiled into thinking we understand a word because it's in English, but actually we haven't understood what the real meaning is from the point of view of Pali or Sanskrit. So I think there are certain words which would be better off left as they are, as we already are doing. Buddha, for example, everybody says Buddha, right? Everybody says Dharma, everybody says Sangha. We all know what that means. And they fit in very easily. They're easy words to say. And, you know, if you explain what you mean by the word, then after that, people don't get confused and they know what they're talking about. So my feeling is that we should just bring in a few words which are very, don't have an exact meaning in English and would just confuse people more because they think they understand when they don't. And just use the original Pali or Sanskrit.
Right. That makes so much sense. And it also gives the breadth, I guess, to find our own meaning and to kind of contemplate those words too through practice.
And after a while, they become like English words, like karma. Everybody knows karma. Everybody knows the word mantra. I mean, all these words. I mean, like, you know, as I say, you know, samsara and nirvana now have entered I mean, that's almost a danger, that it enters the culture and then takes on a complete different meaning to what it was originally intended to do. But still, I think there's less danger than trying to think up some complicated English way around it, which doesn't make sense even in English and is awkward and nobody else understands what you're talking about. Cyclic existence, what the hell's that? So, you know, while you're explaining to people what cyclic existence is, you might as well just call it samsara.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Because the other problem, I think, with translating sometimes is that you might find a good word in English, maybe. It'll probably be quite reductionist, but then that gets translated into other foreign languages too. And so it's a bit like Chinese whispers.
That's also true.
Yeah.
I mean, certain languages, especially if they have very, very heavy cultural baggage with them, have a hard time translating concepts into their own language, like Spanish, for example, which has a very Catholic background, or Chinese, of course, which had a very Confucian and Taoist background. And so the Chinese translators really struggled with Indian thought, which was so different from Chinese thought. And to find words which had meaning in Chinese, which didn't reflect back on Confucianism or Taoism. That was really, through the centuries, was a big challenge for them. In the Tibetan, they were lucky because they didn't have any written language at all. So when the Dharma came there, they sent someone to India to invent a script. And so he basically based the Tibetan script on Devanagari, on the Sanskrit script, so that it's fairly easy to read Hindi signs because a lot of them are quite similar to Tibetan. And then they made up the language, the Dharma language. They got together and they just invented it because the language was so simple. They could agree this word is going to be this in Tibetan, and they could right from the beginning agree, and then everybody translated in conformity. So they didn't have to worry so much there, like the Chinese, which was already such an old culture, as in the West, you know, where we have such an old culture already, then to translate Buddhist thought into that and not get it mixed up with our cultural conditioning is quite a challenge for translators.
Yeah. I think it's you know, interesting that the word samadhi is usually translated as concentration, because that does imply the sort of Western kind of get your head down to something, really focus, kind of work really hard, use a lot of effort and force. And that can destroy the practice, I think, or sort of take us in slightly the wrong direction sometimes.
Well, when you think of samadhi, I don't know, in India at least, their idea of samadhi in the Hindu is a very high state of clarity and awareness and kind of meditative absorption in a way, but it's a very expansive sense. It's not this narrow idea. If you say, oh, someone's in samadhi, you imagine them in a state of bliss, but also of total clarity and concentration, but very open concentration, meditative concentration, not the kind of focused only on one thing, tight kind of concentration. Samadhi has a very open feeling about it.
Right. Yeah, kind of boundlessness.
Yeah, it's a very, and it has a very spiritual. You would never say that somebody, concentrating on writing their thesis or something is in samadhi, because it also has the idea of no thought. That's also there. That you're in a state of open clarity with no thought. Yeah. Great. So that's the opposite of what we often think of when we think about concentrating,
It's true. Yeah, great. Thank you. So much food for thought, and moreover, contemplation and practice in all its forms. I think this has been incredibly enriching. I thoroughly enjoyed this and benefited greatly. And I think I'm glad that we're recording it so we can listen again and again. So thank you so much, Jetsunma, for being here.
Sent in these questions. I'm really very grateful because the answers depend on the questions.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Are there any closing words you'd like to say before you leave? I think you've said
really what you're trying to do is very important. And I would honestly, from my heart, hand it over to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to help you. And say, okay, we're all going to work on this together, but I need your blessings for this. And just trust that, if it's meant to happen, it will happen. And I think it really is genuinely needed and very important. And therefore it will happen. So, go forward with that confidence. Okay?
Thank you.
And all your helpers, they're there with you. You're not alone. You're not alone anyway. You've got all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the universe. Come on. And so just have that, don't worry, don't be anxious. Just go forward step by step. And I'm sure it will all come into place as it's meant to do.
Wonderful.
So for all of you, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you so much. So I wanted to invite Derek just shortly to say a few words. Hopefully he's going to put in the link there to Jetsunma's nunnery in India and say a few closing words to end the day.
Yeah, I really also want to thank Jetsunma so much for being here with us and for sharing your deep wisdom and experience. It's very profound to be here and to have that conversation between you and Venerable Canda, and I'm grateful for both of your discussion today, and also for everybody who wrote in with questions. Thank you so much. If you would like to find out more about the nunnery, Dongyal Gatsu Ling Nunnery, I think I didn't say that correctly, then you can have a look on the website, which is dgli.org. Or there's another website you can look at, that's tenzinpalmo.com.
Yeah, tenzinpalmo.com is the one for our actual nunnery. DGLI, which is DGL Initiatives, is dealing with the American branch, which has various nunneries, not just ours. Our specific nunnery is under tenzinpalmo.com.
So that's the best one to look at, tenzinpalmo.com.
Yeah, it's very easy.
And Jetsunma has very, very generously said that she would like the benefit of today's session to be for the Anukampa Bhikkhuni project. So if anybody who feels moved or inspired to donate, then please visit the Anukampa website, which is anukampaproject.org/donate. And thank you all so much for your support and your presence. And thank you to Jetsunma again.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you. Thank everybody. And may you all be well and happy, truly. And may all your Dharma aspirations be effortlessly fulfilled. May it be.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. That's our Ajahn Brahm style celebratory sadhu. Just, yeah, to express our joy and happiness.
Take care, Venerable Canda, and I'm sure that everything will go. I mean, whatever obstacles we have, they're all part of the path. And, you know, they are all our learning opportunities. So don't despair ever, you know. And as His Holiness the Dalai Lama always says, never give up.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. Please take care.
Care.
Bye. Okay, we can stop recording now.